Welcome. My name is Dominic Gilroy. I'm a Library and Knowledge Service Development Manager working in the North. This is an introduction to Outcome 6 of the Quality and Improvement Outcomes Framework. It's one of a series of support webinars for NHS Library and Knowledge Specialists. A more general introductory webinar for the Outcomes Framework is available, and we would recommend that you watch that introduction before viewing these more focused guides. Outcome 6 is about impact. It's about looking at the difference that library and knowledge specialists and the services we provide make to the organisations in which we work. We'll be looking at details about the outcome, what it covers and why it's important, how it might help you in thinking about ways to improve your services, how the levels might be applied to this particular outcome, and the distinctions between each level. We'll consider some useful questions to think about in relation to this outcome and how it applies to your organisation and your service. Looking back to the 2018 pilot, we'll also consider some of the good practice that we noted from services who took part. And finally, we'll think about some of the features that would indicate a service and organisation working towards level 4. So this outcome shows how library and knowledge specialists make a positive impact on the individuals and organisations which they serve. It considers how effective library and knowledge specialists are in collecting evidence to show the impact of their services, and it looks at how this evidence is used to promote the service both internally and externally to stakeholders. This outcome excludes general user feedback, which often does not contain impact data. This could be, for example, feedback about how friendly library staff are, how they always find what's needed, and so on. Such feedback, though, if it's detailed enough, might be useful in addressing outcome 3. The key thing to remember when thinking about impact is the word difference. We are interested in what differences library and knowledge specialists make to the organisations which they serve. As the BSI definition shown here on the slide states, the difference might be made to individuals or to groups. To simplify the distinction between the two a little, we might, for example, be providing some training to a student, which then goes on to give them the skills they need to research and write a better essay. This should be considered a personal impact. On the other hand, we might be helping a senior manager with an evidence search, which then helps them to rewrite a service pathway, which in turn improves patient care and saves the organisation money. This would be more of an organisational impact. As we'll see when we look in more detail at the levels, evidence for personal impacts might well be sufficient to demonstrate an organisation and a service working at level 1. But for higher levels, it will be necessary to show a wider organisational impact. Some of the ways in which this outcome might help in decision making and service improvement. Well, firstly, it can help library and knowledge specialists to appreciate the ways in which their services can make a difference. It might be something the team have not previously considered in much detail, and it may well reveal differences that they were not aware they were making. In a similar way, this work may highlight gaps in the service's current impact. This might be because no impact evidence is available at present, and this might suggest that staff need to seek such evidence. Or alternatively, it might suggest that no impact is happening at all at the current time, and this would suggest that services and resources need to be refocused accordingly. The collection and analysis of impact data can also provide enhanced opportunities for marketing and promotion using much more persuasive evidence. And this in turn can lead to more uptake by target groups. Similarly, if you're needing evidence to put forward for business cases, perhaps to recruit staff or to request more resources, then impact evidence can be a valuable tool. Taking the perspective of organisational or senior stakeholders, impact data is also invaluable. It can help assure them of the value of library and knowledge specialists and their resources, and in turn, this can inform resourcing decisions and their receptiveness to further investment requests, and also improve the likelihood that these senior staff will call on the skills of library and knowledge specialists for their own evidence needs and decision making. Moving on then to look at the various levels as applied to this outcome. An organisation working at level 0 may be one which has not arranged access to library and knowledge professionals and their services. Or perhaps there are library staff and services in place, but the collection and evidencing of impact is not something that's on the agenda. Little or no work has been undertaken to investigate the difference which library and knowledge specialists make to their service and the organisation. Or at best, the thinking is exactly that, and no planning or action has yet been put in place around first steps in the impact gathering process. In short, the organisation and the service are unable to evidence the indicators associated with level 1. At level 1, library and knowledge specialists are planning the impact gathering process. If data is already gathered, it is likely to happen in an unplanned and impromptu manner. The weighting of any evidence collected may tend to demonstrate personal rather than organisational impact, or if that evidence is more varied, there is likely to be a limited number of responses collected. The key aim of the Quality and Improvement Outcomes Framework is service improvement, and as such there will be an expectation that all services have a service improvement plan, resulting from this baseline self-assessment. However, for services operating at level 0 and at level 1 in one or more of the outcomes, organisations should expect a more intensive monitoring of these service plans and to work closely with HEE's Library and Knowledge Service leads, who will provide support and guidance for service improvement. As we move on to level 2, the library and knowledge specialists will have a systematic process in place for the collection of impact data. Data will be regularly collected in a planned way for at least one of the library's services, for example, information skills training. And this will include both quantitative and qualitative questionnaire and case study data. There will be evidence that library and knowledge specialists are doing something with the data they collect, specifically some kind of analysis, and using it to promote the service, for example, in annual reporting, promotions and marketing. At level 3, the focus moves on to the evaluation and use of the data collected. By level 3, the systematic process demonstrated in level 2 will now cover a range of library services and not just the minimum one required at level 2. The evaluation, reporting and promotion of this data is now systematic, as well as just the collection. In other words, these processes are now part of a regular, timetabled and planned activity for staff, rather than just a one-off annual process. There will also be evidence of stakeholder endorsement being gained for use in promotion and impact stories. This may take the form of people providing quotes for impact case studies and agreeing to be quoted in promotional materials. At level 4, the cumulative work detailed in levels 1 to 3 has resulted in senior stakeholders recognising the value of library and knowledge specialists in supporting the core business of the NHS. By core business, we mean management and clinical decision making, service planning, etc., not just limited to educational purposes. Senior stakeholders are likely to include board members, chief executives, and so on within the organisations served. And it should be demonstrated that this recognition is ongoing and embedded rather than sporadic and ad hoc, for example, on request. It should be demonstrated that the work of the Library Knowledge Service has impacted upon the organisation's priorities, and the service should contribute both to the impact questionnaire data where requested and case study data submitted to the National Impact Evidence Base. We'll now move on to some of the questions which we feel might be useful to consider in relation to this outcome. So first of all, how do we know if the work of the library and knowledge specialists are making a difference to the organisation's staff and the work they do within and outside the organisation? This first question, of course, is of relevance both to the library and knowledge specialists themselves and to organisational decision makers. How do library and knowledge services staff know if they haven't collected the evidence? And how do organisational and senior stakeholders know if this evidence has not been shared with them? How are library and knowledge specialists ensuring that impact data are being collected in an efficient and effective manner? In other words, we might want to think about whether the mechanisms in place are ensuring that the process is as streamlined as it can be. How are other people doing it, and can we learn anything from them? How are we ensuring that appropriate opportunities to share impact data with decision makers are being taken? How do we make sure that we spot these opportunities? And are there ways to streamline this to make it become a more systematic process? How are impact data being shared with the wider Library and Knowledge Services community and with the HEE Library and Knowledge Services leads to ensure that it's available for use in advocacy, good practice and for references by other services? Is your service sharing impact case studies via the Knowledge for Healthcare blog? Are you publishing and promoting your work with other colleagues? We'll move on now to think about some of the good practice which we identified in the 2018 pilot. We should start by saying that in the pilot, the levels were different. We had level 0 to level 5, but nevertheless, we're sharing some of the details which we think may be useful to you. Most pilot services were working between level 2 and level 3 in the pilot. Examples of good practice which we identified included use of both the questionnaire and the case studies from the Knowledge for Healthcare blog, sharing of the case studies via the Knowledge for Healthcare blog, use of the data locally for promotional purposes. In addition, features of 2 services which we verified as working at level 4 were reviewing their ongoing impact data collection processes to identify areas for improvement. We provided a number of areas of guidance for sites as they progressed towards a level 4. The first of these was to avoid including feedback in besides the impact evidence. Mixing the two up confuses the assessors and makes us consider whether or not sites truly understand the nature of impact. Secondly, we asked for more evidence of how services were using the impact evidence locally for promotion and so on. For services with very low response rates to the impact questionnaire and low numbers of case studies, we suggested they consider strategies to improve on their numbers. We suggested that services ensure that a systematic process is in place for impact work and are able to demonstrate this in their evidence. And finally, we noted that some services were using a different template to the case study template provided on the Knowledge for Healthcare blog. This is fine so long as it does capture the basics of what impact involves. Some templates did not clearly demonstrate what impact was achieved and what role the library has in the process. And finally, when thinking about Outcome 6, don't forget that there are a number of useful resources on the Knowledge for Healthcare blog. Many of these have already been mentioned. For example, the generic impact questionnaire, interview and case study templates, and examples of quality reviewed case studies and impact vignettes. You can find these on the Knowledge for Healthcare blog under the Quality and Impact section. Thank you for listening. This is the end of the webinar for Outcome 6. You'll find contact details for our regional colleagues listed on the screen now. Please do not hesitate to get in touch if you have any questions. Thank you.